Welcome to Fundraising Leaders with Drew, where we embark on a journey to discover the heart and soul of nonprofit fundraising and decode the strategies that lead to fundraising success. My name is Drew Clancy. I'll be your host, and today we are joined by Jess Larsen. Jess is an entrepreneur and co-founder of the Child Rescue Association of North America, a nonprofit organization dedicated to combating child trafficking and exploitation. Child Rescue operates with the help of volunteers, survivors, and experts from the special operations and intelligence communities. Jess has also hosted over 900 episodes of his innovation and leadership podcast, which hit the #1 ranking for innovation podcasts globally with over 4 million downloads. Let's jump right in with Jess. Jess, thanks for doing this.
Oh, Drew, thanks so much for having me on.
So, before we delve into your work with Child Rescue, would you give us a few highlights, perhaps some notable achievements from your background?
Yeah, so maybe a quick overview of my professional background. I used to be on mergers and acquisitions team for Citi. These days I run a commercial real estate fund. We're building small resorts for action sports families near national parks and surfing beaches and stuff like that. I've got a media company where we make videos and podcasts for Bloomberg and Columbia University and a bunch of different CEOs. And then I've got my own podcast, Innovation and Leadership, where I've done 900 interviews. And lifelong artist and snowboarder, Mexican food lover. And my two big passions in life are I eventually want to make monies, and I eventually want to have enough money to do all the things we plan to do for our Child Rescue Association.
Fabulous. So let's talk about Child Rescue and how this came to be, how the decision to start Child Rescue, maybe some of the kind of stories from the early years.
Yeah, so I think it really got started. I was in high school and I found out one of my really good friends had been abused, and I just didn't think that happened to people I knew. And then that same year I found out another one of my best friends, it had happened to her as a little girl as well. And I was just kind of rocked by it. And I was so many emotions, and I didn't feel like there was anything I could do about it. And it really ate at me. And I remember a handful of years later, I was at this business conference. I was 21. And for some reason, there was this Baptist preacher speaking at the conference. I don't know why, but he was great. And he just said that he thought God had given everybody a purpose in life, mission in life. And if you didn't know what yours was, he might have given you a hint. It might be one of the things that makes you the angriest. And I thought instantly, it was like a lightning bolt. I was like, oh, I know what that is. Because I'd found out people were renting kids out to be abused by other adults for money. Like they were doing that as a business, child trafficking, and making videos of it for exploitation online, And I was just like, that's got to be one of the worst things on earth. And that one just it just digs at me. So I think maybe that's my thing. And then my whole plan was get super, super rich so I could help with it eventually. And a number of years later, I was maybe 29, and this thought, it'd been rolling around for about 8 years at this point. And I watched, so we knew about some abuse that had happened in my wife's family and down her mother's line, but we didn't really know all the details. It kind of been, there's a lot of shame around stuff like this. And I had watched Schindler's List for the first time, and I'd watched this BBC documentary where they took a girl who had been trafficked from Odessa, Ukraine, and they took her back there and undercover went and found her traffickers. And it wasn't like the bad guys off the movie Taken with Liam Neeson. It was like this, 50-something-year-old frumpy lady and her kind of dirtbag 20-something-year-old son. And then the BBC is filming, they don't realize, as they offer to sell women and girls to the BBC on camera. And I was just oh my gosh, these kids cannot wait for me to get rich. We just got to start doing what we can now.
Yeah.
And as we started working on the cause more, it's almost like so much a coincidence it doesn't seem real, but we'd known about abuse that had happened in my wife's family and what sounded like it might have been trafficking a few decades ago. But over this process, her mom ended up sharing some things with her that again, shame, embarrassment, different things like that hadn't shared with her own daughter. Her daughter was 29, and my mother-in-law actually told me and said, "Can you tell Stephanie?" So we knew abuse had happened to my mother-in-law, but we didn't know she'd been forced into it for money, and like her grandma had, and it ends up it's 100 years that there's no fathers in that generation. My mother-in-law is a fourth generation trafficking victim, and she broke the cycle, so it didn't happen to my wife, and that just made it like it had been close to home anyways because we knew some of the family stories, but that was just like dagger to the heart of like, oh my gosh, what if groups have been around to help my mother-in-law? What if law enforcement had been more educated? What if these things were going on and she had to go through all that horrific thing for unfortunately for years? And so for us, it's just an issue that's close to home. And some years we've been able to do a lot for it, and some years we haven't been able to do as much. But it's just one of those things that had the little lightning bolt felt like I'm supposed to work on.
So powerful, Jess. Thank you for sharing. Tell me a little bit about, this kind of lightning bolt moment happens. You get married, you learn more about it. Tell me about the decision and how you went about starting child rescue, kind of from a passion of yours to figuring out ways to make a difference and to raise money.
Yeah. So, I mean, I tried to just have my staff do it, volunteer for the first 6 months. We're like, oh, we'll do this on the side. And we didn't make hardly any progress. And we were also making the mistake of telling people the horror stories. And we get a big emotional reaction, but people mostly just shrivel up in a ball and like hide in the corner,
Sure.
And two things became really different. About 6 months in, we accidentally started telling some success stories. We had this survivor who had, NYPD had helped her get this other girl escape, and then NYPD helped her escape. She ended up on America's Most Wanted. Her name's Natasha Herzig. It's an amazing story. She ended up on America's Most Wanted. America's Most Wanted caught her trafficker. She got to testify at his sentencing. And it was like, we started telling people the story because we were having her come in to teach a class for youth. And people are like, holy cow, how do I be a part of this? We're like, oh, well, that hasn't happened before. I guess we should tell success stories instead of just the pain, right?
Right.
So similar timing to that, a little before that, we had one of my really good friends, Lindsay Hadley, had been in nonprofit work for years, and her husband was doing work with us, and she had thrown a really successful concert with Ben Folds 5 that had raised money for Rotary, and she basically said, like, why don't you hire me to throw you guys a benefit concert? And this kind of like, oh yeah, limping along, volunteering on the side. We're not going to save any kids this way. And so we did that, and we got a little bit of money together to cover her, to be able to bring her on as an employee. And we got her, and we could pay for half of an assistant, and she recruited 200 volunteers. And through this big concert in Salt Lake City, Utah, we were living in Western Canada at the time, and it totally missed all the financial projections, and I had lent a lot of money to it with my brother, and that money was not coming back this way, and she was able to salvage it, and she was able to then throw a celebrity fundraiser off the back of that concert. And Sumner Redstone, the chairman of Viacom, she was able to get him to write us $1 million check, and it was like a dream scenario. And we went down to thank him for it, and he gave us another $500,000, and that like ran our charity for like 7 years. And since then, we've had ups and downs in the fundraising, but she had this foresight to like really get the word out in a big way. And we had a survivor who'd been, a woman who'd been sold to the Hells Angels and was able to escape. She came and spoke on stage, and documentarians spoke on stage, and we had 311 and Third Eye Blind and Dashboard Confessional and all these bands up there. And it's funny today. So what is this? So that was 2010, about a week away from 2014, right? And
Sure.
I still regularly have people come up to me and be like, hey, just so you know, I was at your concert at Thanksgiving Point, your Candlelight Serenade, and that really had an impact on us. And it was like, this is before the movie Taken had come out. And
Right.
we really had like, people knew it happened in Cambodia or something, but they didn't know it was happening to American kids, like the general public didn't.
Right.
And so, it was just a real launching off point for us.
Mm. So when something like that happens, you get this initial check from Summer Redstone for $1 million, and you get another $500,000. Tell me a little bit about, or share a little bit about, how do you try to take the momentum from that and build upon that? What were some of the strategies that you then pursued?
Yeah. I mean, to be quite frank, it was almost bad timing
Good.
because it had come because we gotten so much all at once.
Yeah.
Like, how much do I wish I could have taken our 14 years of experience and gone back and spent the money the way I would now, right?
Yeah.
And leveraged it for future fundraising the way we would now. But it was this opportunity for us to actually do things. We actually did stuff.
Yeah.
We paid for a law enforcement training again in Salt Lake because that's where the momentum had started, and we got the Salt Palace and brought in a good friend of mine who's advised us all these 14 years, who's the head of the human trafficking task force for North Los Angeles, and he brought a different investigator and a researcher from Florida, and that survivor, Natasha Herzeg, came in, and we trained 285 FBI agents and police officers and parole officers, and they got to hear, most of them had never heard from a survivor, right? And Natasha got to tell them exactly what it was like. She'd come from a middle-income family, and she told she was going to have a job doing makeup for models all around the country, and it was a new perspective. It was a new narrative on the crime that they hadn't heard before. And we had FBI agent came up to our LAPD guy, Mark Evans, who's I've had on my podcast, and he said, "This is the best training I've ever been to, because your photos were from cases from 2 weeks ago, not 2 decades ago."
Right.
And so actually doing things like this, Lindsay, she did an event with the police at a university, Utah Valley University out here, and she had some members of law enforcement, and they talked, and at the end she just felt this feeling like to tell everybody, hey, if there's anyone here who knows someone being trafficked or you're being trafficked, like, let us know and we want to help. And
Sure.
There's a bunch of college kids, she thought, that was weird, why did I say that? The whole place clears out. This girl comes up and says, there's a family member that's been renting me out since a kid. Even though I'm still at college, they're still renting me out and I don't want to go home. Lindsay and immediately walks over to the police, and she didn't have to go home that night. And when Lindsay called me that day up, I'm up running my investment fund in Canada, I started crying. I was like, oh, this was all a theory. Now we actually did something that mattered. It was like, then I'm hooked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
So
in
powerful.
your answer to momentum, it's been a lot by the people that we've worked with. So subject matter experts. In our case, we got former FBI counterintelligence officers and members from the special operations community, and I mentioned our LAPD cops, and like, as passionate as I am, I only have there's limits to like doing research and being informed. And even though I in addition to doing CEO coaching for a dozen years, I do free coaching for trafficking survivors and women who've been beat up by their husbands and stuff like this, and and actually ended up being a coach to my own mother-in-law because, the PTSD goes on decades later, right? And so there's a certain authority I got from that type of work, but there's so many aspects of this crime I haven't been a part of combating. So we were able to recruit those people, and we were able to raise a bit of money to fly them out to give a speech or to conduct this police training or these kind of things. And we didn't try to do it all off passion. We kept adding credibility by bringing in people who donors could really get behind. And, off my podcast, I met large family offices, hundreds of millions of dollars, and being able to not just be passionate about it, but like be genuinely involved myself, and then also introduce them to these, high caliber subject matter experts, turned into them doing things like saying, hey, we want to host a fundraiser for you. And I really can honestly say, I don't know that it would have gotten there. Like, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have gotten there if I hadn't brought my subject matter experts with me.
Hear, hear. Let's kind of turn a little bit towards actually raising money. And maybe you could share a little bit about sort of your, thoughts around that, strategies, and maybe we can go into a little bit when you've identified a potential donor. What are the steps you go through, Jess, to prepare for that meeting? How do you follow up? Give us a little bit of your secret sauce.
Yeah. So some of it, I just push the easy button. Okay. So, I'm such a nerd for podcasts, and I've got my show and we make shows like this week, so what I do is I'm just public about my passion for it. It's in my LinkedIn bio. It's, there's links to the website, and I talk about it, right? I talk about it on my podcast. So like I had a guy on my podcast this week who he sold his ad agency for $100 million to this. Well, he grown it to $100 million in revenue and sold it to this $17 billion Omnicom, right? And he's just a high quality person. And so just because we were going to interact, he's doing research on me, he comes across it. And before we even start the show, he says, hey, I just want to tell you ahead of time that I think what you're doing is incredible, and I've decided to donate to it. And so watch out for a donation for me. And I actually got it this morning. And so that idea of like just talking about it regularly and spending time with the kind of people who a decision like that isn't like pulling teeth, because they've got some extra to give.
Right.
You don't have to start a podcast, but what I would recommend, a strategy I don't see enough nonprofit leaders doing, because a lot of them come to me for advice, right, is we all know what you want, nonprofit leader, executive director. You want a donation, right? You're so passionate about the cause, and that can easily blind all of us nonprofit leaders from what does the donor want, right?
Absolutely.
Like, is that our afterthought? Because if it's our afterthought, they're going to be able to sense it from us. And so, there's this great book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, the ASU professor, and possibly an even better book is the second book called Persuasion. But he talks about authority, liking, reciprocity, like the kind of things that create influence, okay?
Right.
And I don't think enough nonprofit leaders are thinking about reciprocity, okay? You've got these people who you've told yourself, oh, they're going to be able to get a good feeling by donating here. And they will. But is that all you can offer them? If you're looking for somebody to write a larger check, it's probably somebody who is has come into money for some reason, right?
Right.
Well, guess what? They're just a person like all the rest of us. They want friends. They want appreciation. They want to be recognized. They want connections. What can we do as a nonprofit leader to do them a favor before we're asking for one? Can we have a exclusive dinner party where we get the highest profile people possible, and we're inviting this donor to it before they become a donor, but it's not a donor meeting. It's not like it's not the fundraiser, right? We're literally trying to do them a favor. Can we invite them to lunch with someone else? That one really good big donor you've got, right? Would they be willing to go to lunch with a prospective donor that is not about raising money? That's just about making friends. And it's a long-term view, but this idea of like us being generous ahead of time, us not being so transactional, is something that has done very well for us. So on my podcast, I get to give these high profile people PR. Then I invite them. We do these private dinner parties. I invite them, and I do not raise money for child rescue. I do not sell my real estate fund investment. I do not sell, podcast packages. It's literally like, I actually say this from stage. We'll put like 50 people in there. We'll say, hey, this is my chance to give back to you guys. The whole night tonight is me hoping you meet somebody who can help you with your business. Let's eat.
Yeah.
And that's literally it. And they're all like waiting for the catch. And then they go home and there was no catch. There was just like a gift bag at the end, right?
Yeah.
The texts and emails I get over the following days after those events, and like this, like, oh, you didn't try to just use me for money. Like, you might actually be investing in me as a person. And I think if that was the only reason, like it's just so I can get a donation later, they'll probably see through it. But if we can really love people, like think about like the friendship orchard. Like, I'm planting the friendship tree, then I'm going to water it, then I'm going to fertilize it, then I'm going to water it again, then I'm going to fertilize it. Nobody's like 2 weeks later, where are these peaches? Like, I need peaches, people, right?
Right.
I don't mean to criticize others, but I will just say it this way. It's been really helpful for me to get things for child rescue that sometimes I wouldn't have even asked for, that they end up volunteering by give first, be generous first. And I'm not giving money. I'm giving recognition. I'm giving introductions. I'm giving the chance to feel good about themselves by giving me advice for child rescue. One of the best fundraising tips I've ever done is get somebody really smart and say, can I get your advice? I'm not asking for a donation. What would you do if you were me? But like literally be looking for their advice. And of course, you always hope somebody would write you a check, whatever. But like, you're actually not there for that. Like, you're actually there for the advice, not the check. Then they can sense it from you. And then they can go shields down and they can start to think if they do want to give you a check. We all love to buy. We love to go get our new thing that we've been thinking about getting. We all hate to be sold. I mean, who's like, a telemarketer, let me have that call. I want to listen.
Do you, Jess, can you share maybe an example? I love your point about listening to the donor and understanding what it is that they might want to do, or perhaps something that they're interested in doing. Making that match, if you will. And is there an example or two perhaps you can share?
Yeah. So I'm just going to go to books because I don't have any original thoughts. I just regurgitate what I've heard from other people. So my two favorite sales books, and I consider asking for donations just another form of sales. My two favorite sales books of all time are, neither of them are sales books. One is called The Trusted Advisor by David Maister, and the other one is called Bonds That Make Us Free by Terry Warner. And then I'm going to toss in a book I know you recently read, The 3-Minute Rule by Brant Pinvidic, where he says, like, get rid of your 20, 30-minute pitch decks and stuff and boil it down to the most vital 3 minutes. Like, what is it? How does it work? Are you sure? And can you do it? And if you do a good job on that, they're going to ask you 20 minutes of questions, right? But that, Bonds That Make Us Free and any of the books by the Arbinger Institute, this concept of like, stop objectifying people, like spot your own blind spot when you've been objectifying someone a bit. And then the Trusted Advisor of like, it's not enough to be right. People have to want your advice. So you've got this idea on how you're going to help the cause that your team does. But the donor has to want to hear that from you. So what are we doing to earn permission? Like, you think about it like a negotiating table. We're on this side. Think of like, some Wall Street movie or something, some lawyer movie, right? Big, long boardroom table. People like geared up for battle in their suits, right? And they're on this side, they're on this side. It's what it's like. The donor is being prepared for this uncomfortable ask a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
By a person who sees them as a giant walking ATM machine instead of a human, right? What can I do to signal I'm not like those other executive directors? I'm not like those other development directors. How can I do favors for them in a non-transactional way? So they uncuff me from the chair across the table from them, which is like the salesperson chair, right?
Sure.
Where they give me the key to that to uncuff, and they let me move one chair to the right. And then we keep going on the relationship, or we keep going through the conversation. They move another chair to the right, another chair to the right. And eventually they invite me around to their side of the table because I've taken off my hat of like, I'm here to get money for the charity. And they think that I genuinely care about them and what they're trying to accomplish and how they're trying to do it more than me getting the money. So they go shields down and they tell me what they're really thinking. I can always go around the other side of the table and write up the donation form later, right? But if I can take that self-interest hat off and like actually tell like, hey, you know what my charity is about? And you still took this meeting. How come? Like, what is it that you care about this cause? Who cares why I care about this cause? Like, why, what? You're a busy person. Why did you want to take time for this today? What? what's been your experience with this in the past? What have been the best donations you've given in the past and why? What do you want to do more of? What do you want to do less of? How do you see the world? Are you hoping to have a family member be involved in some way other than just writing a check and getting an annual report 10 months from now? Like, what's a win for you? With the little bit you know about us, what kind of advice would you have for us? And when they
Yeah.
talk, take notes, like
Yes.
with a pen, writing down it, because it helps a guy like me who's an over talker, as you can tell. It helps a guy like me shut up and listen because I'm too busy taking notes to now interrupt them.
Love it. Love it. Tell me a little bit, it sounds like, I think if I'm understanding, you're major gift focused. Do you also
Right
do
now,
more of an annual fund where it's, potentially smaller donors giving, or do you really focus on the bigger donors, the major donors?
I got to tell you, we're not that good at the other one. I
Yeah.
mean, we've got some people who've really decided they care about this cause for their reason, and they just send us money, and I appreciate them so much.
Yeah.
That's something I want to get better at, is like consumer marketing,
Yeah.
right? Um, I think there's some people that are great at it. Again, often outside the nonprofit world, my business partner owns this agency called Creatively, and they make these really funny videos that it's an ad, but it's like a 5-minute ad. You put it on the front of a YouTube channel, like you just put it on YouTube or Facebook, but it's so funny. People will watch it for 5 minutes and then text it to all their friends. Okay. And like, if you got a consumer product that's doing $1 million a year, you give him a $750,000 budget, and now you start doing $3 million a month instead of $1 million a month, right? Or $4 million a
Right.
month instead of $1 million.
Yeah.
And I think there's some things there for the nonprofit world to learn. I think that there is some folks in industries like that I'm hoping to learn from for us. So the short answer is, like, we're lucky enough that some of those people send us that kind of money, even though we're bad at knowing how to get it. And more of our efforts have been more on major gifts or even medium level gifts. So
Sure. What do you think makes for a great fundraiser?
a person who can set their agenda aside. I'm going to sound like a broken record here. The person who can set their own agenda aside and build a friendship that will last whether they donate or not. When somebody thinks you're actually their friend, everything changes. And as far as I can tell, the only way to get them to come to that conclusion is to actually be their friend. Send them YouTube videos that can help them. Make introductions for them that can help them where there's nothing in it for you. Send them text messages. There's this woman on my podcast she grew her private wealth management firm to like $6 billion and sold it to Franklin Templeton. Okay. Her name's Lisette Cooper. And it ends up she cares about this cause. And she's done this incredible work, getting other investors to but to do proxy votes and get Verizon to remove sexual abuse imagery off of Verizon. They've been doing back and forth with Facebook, and I mean, making big differences in the world, right? And, she's never donated to us. But when she calls me and says, like, hey, will you, why don't you tune into this online program? I do it. And when I see something in the news about Facebook and this issue, I text her about it. And we're friends. Like, we're just, we're from different, there's an age gap between us. But like, if Lisette asked me to do something for her charity, I would do it tomorrow, because I just really like her. And who knows if that's ever going to go anywhere financially, but I don't really care. Like, she's like, I'm connected with her like soul to soul a bit, right?
Yeah.
But, it's not like we're like snowboarding buddies. She lives on the East Coast. I'm out here, right? But it's like, anyways, I just got these people in my life, and I ask them for advice, and some of them come volunteer to me. Hey, listen, we want to do this with you.
Yeah.
And some of them I say, how do you think I should do this? And they say, well, I can help you with that part, right? One of my mentors said, first mentor I ever had that was younger than me, Mitch Warner, he runs that Arbinger Institute, he wrote those great books. But he said, if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. And that's gone pretty well for me. But you have to actually want the advice. It can't be pretend.
Here, 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 here. One of the things, Jess, I've heard you talk about is getting together, in your business and with your nonprofit, getting together leaders for essentially a dinner party, and share a little bit about your thinking there, and maybe some of the success you've had there, and how you approach these.
It started small. I did my first one. We just went to an Italian restaurant, and I invited, like, I don't know, 8 or 10 kind of interesting people, CEO, family office, guy who's in the movies, and guy who sold his tech company. And like, I wasn't even paying for it. Okay. I was just like, hey, here's some people I've got some people that I know you don't know that I think you should know. And I think, like, 2 of them had met each other before something, but it's mostly like, people worth knowing that they didn't know. And I put us together, and I said, okay, great. Let's go around the room. Everybody take, room. Let's go around the table. Everybody, they got this big table, and go around and tell us what you're doing work-wise and business-wise, and what, like, who an ideal customer is for you in case anyone else can help you. And then ask us some question that you would want, this table to give you advice on. Like, what, who's around this table, what's something that we can give you some thoughts on. And it took a whole hour, like 3 minutes a person, ended up taking the whole hour. They loved it so much. They're like, Jess, can we do this every quarter? This was so great. Thanks for making this happen. One of the participants picked up the bill before I could for all of our lunch. I was like, oh, there's something here, You don't have to be like me. And so now we do these dinner parties with 50 high profile people. And again, the podcast is such an easy way to make friends with all these high profile people. And as soon as you start inviting them, they find out who else is coming. They call you and say, hey, I didn't know it was going to be this kind of an event. Can so-and-so come? And if you're just really strict, like, we don't allow any plus ones. There's no hangers on. Everybody in the room is somebody you want to meet. Right. Mm-hmm. And then when they call and say, can I bring so-and-so? It's like, no, like, they either have to be at the level of the other people in this room, or, can we invite them to something else another time?
Sure.
And by keeping the density of interesting people in the room so high, it's just so magnetic. And then other people are when they want to bring somebody to the next one, they know what level of invite, what level of person they have to have for that person to be able to get in. And this idea of, like, this is just for you. We're not selling anything. I'm not raising money for the donation at this table. Like, this is genuinely for you. It's like, I care about you. I want to do something for you. If that's genuine, they'll be able to sense it, and it invites the same thing back. And not from everybody, but you don't need everybody. You just need somebody.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
You could do this in an online virtual summit. It doesn't have to be in person. There's many other formats, but this idea of, like, you're a nonprofit, you probably need more money for the mission. You're not going to make friends by running around donating to other people's charities or something, from your 501c3 to their 501c3 in most cases. Some can. Okay. So what are you going to give them? What are you going to give them that really matters? And genuine introductions from genuine people to genuine people is something that you can give away and give away and give away and give away. And as long as you are careful with your relationships and you're not wasting their time, and you are doing things that's good for both of these people you're putting together, I mean, you can do that all day.
So good. So good.
I'm a one-trick pony. I don't know if I have any other tricks.
Well, that's an awesome strategy. Tell me, so,
I want to interrupt. I want to interrupt if I can.
Please.
I want to hear more about you guys and your strategy and the way you help people raise so much money.
Well, our strategy is all about having people tell their story about why they care about such and such uh, nonprofit organization, university, and we help our partners capture these stories. And we believe that fundraising success starts with stories, and it's very much in line with what you're describing in terms of um, being authentic, being real, being genuine, and capturing these stories. And as people do this, as they reflect upon how different organizations have made a difference and why they're passionate about it, and why did you make your first gift? Why do you continue to support this organization? And it's about relationships, not transactions. And that's why we're so passionate about capturing stories.
I knew a little bit about that, but one thing I didn't know that you just said was that you're actually asking them, why had you made donations in the past?
Oh, sure.
Um, I love that question. Like, turning it around, making it about them and allowing them to re-tap into those emotions that help them make the decision beforehand. I didn't know you asked that question. I think that's super interesting.
Here, here. I've got a couple more questions for you, Jess. What's your favorite part about raising money?
When it's genuinely their idea and they get to feel like um they get to feel like this is their organization too, instead of they're helping me with my organization. When they're like looping arms and they're like, I'm so glad we can do this together, and they genuinely feel like this is our organization together, rather than like I helped Jess with his thing. That
Good.
emotion is just like contagious. Like, it just leaks off them. I love that feeling.
Are there any stories, examples of that? Maybe one that stands out, or where locking arms with a donor?
Yeah, and not just financial donors, right? With we have these subject matter experts who spent 20, 30 years becoming like real life Jason Bournes or things like this, and having them say to me, "Oh no, you can't pay me. Like, we're doing this together, brother." And like when they tell me, "Oh no, we're not doing that. Those guys are a bunch of jokers. I'm not letting them touch you with 10-foot pole. They're not allowed here."
Yeah.
and like this like feeling of acceptance by these guys who are like, they're like literally like the action heroes off the movies, right? And or they're like, FBI counterintelligence officer who caught spies in America, right? And they're saying like, "Oh, you know how we can do this? We'll go this, and I'm gonna call this police chief and this guy, and we're gonna make this happen." And they're it's not a paid thing. Like, they're donating their time. They're donating 30 years of relationships, 30 years of subject matter expertise. I mean, I'll just tell you, these guys get $1,000, $1,500 a day. Now that they're retired and they're not a government employee, and they go use like, this is not $20 an hour people, right? And so that feeling of like, man, they really like, they're pretty sure they own this cause as much or possibly more than I do, just because I started the organization. Like that has been a real thing. And then it's contagious when like they give that feeling to the donor who met them too. And now the three of us are linked arm, and they're like, oh, because I will say, like, the government gets dumped on a lot. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of waste, and there's like there's a lot of those jokes about the DMV got invented for a reason. Okay. But there's a lot of public service people who they didn't spend their career in our kind of capitalism. And so the money just showed up every 2 weeks, no matter what kind of thing. And so this idea of like bringing them into understanding how to get the dollars from a donor so that we can all do the mission together. And they're so likely to be like, okay, we're all in the family together. Like they're so likely to get the, like when you're an insider, you're a real insider. And like, we're all in this together. And like the look on this donor's face that now like Jason Bourne thinks that like we're peers and we're doing this together. And like the donor like could care less about me at that point. And they're like, or probably I got to tell you, even more so than those guys as survivors. I get these like brave women who went through these horrific things as a young girl or a teenager or something. And now they've gone through so much healing and they went back to university and got a degree. Like there's this great survivor, Savannah Sanders, who actually runs aftercare facilities now. And like when she's come to our fundraisers and donors, like one of the most hotly contested things at our gala was who got to take her out for dinner. They're so excited they would get to buy her dinner. So they give a donation to us to be allowed to take her out to dinner. And she cares about them because they care about the cause. They care about her because they heard it. And just like this feeling of, it sounds cheesy maybe, this feeling of connection. Like,
Yeah.
we're all in one team together. I can't come up with a better analogy, but like, it's like visceral when you're there. You can feel it.
Indeed. For people who are passionate about this cause, how can they get involved? How can they,
Absolutely. So, and here's a fundraising thing that I think all nonprofits should do. The first thing out of your mouth should not be write me a check, right? Give people something that's a lower bar, but I really mean this. Number one, get out your cell phone right now, and I'll repeat this number a couple of times. Put the National Human Trafficking Hotline in your phone right now so that if you see something weird, you don't have to look up the number. Okay?
Sure.
So it's 1-888-3737-888. Okay? So 1-888-3737-888. Okay? And if you see some adult with some kid and you think something's weird, call it in or call 911 right then. If that's really their uncle, if this is really their sister-in-law, their sister-in-law's sister, right? And they're just having a bad day with this kid, who cares if that adult is insulted that the cop stopped him, that somebody asked a question?
Sure.
The risk of insulting somebody because somebody in authority stopped and asked about this situation versus the potential benefit of saving a kid from decades of PTSD and going through the horrific crime, that is just a trade worth making every single time. So the whole like see something, say something. Here's what we always have to tell people. You don't have to know. You don't have to know something's wrong. Call if you're just suspicious. The phone call is free. The cops already have a salary to go just check this out. You're at the airport, call airport police. You're somewhere else, call 911. You see, one of my favorite stories. This is something anyone could do. Police in Calgary get this call. Hey, there's this woman's hair salon that only dudes are going into. It just seems weird. Like it seems like something's going on. So I met the undercover cop who went in. Not only would they rent people, rent women to you to go use in the back, okay? They offered to sell the women to the cop. Like you can own them, not knowing that they're talking to a cop, okay?
My word.
That is a phone call that you could have made, that I could have made, that anybody listening here could have made. Hey, there's something weird going on this massage parlor. There's something going on at this hair salon, right? Step one. Step two, get on Google. As soon as you hang up this podcast, get on Google and search human trafficking and your state, human trafficking Colorado, human trafficking Texas, or and then do human trafficking and the biggest city near you, human trafficking Houston, human trafficking Denver, whatever, right?
Right.
And just read the stories. Click on the YouTube videos and find out what's going on with child trafficking and online child exploitation and human trafficking close to you. Number 3, get on YouTube and watch documentaries. Amazon, Netflix, they're all over the place, YouTube, and actually hear from the kids who've been through this, from the cops who helped the kids. Those are the kind of things that cement people to this long term. And then if you want to go a step further, check out any great trafficking organization near you. Ours is childrescueassociation.org. And have a bake sale, run a 5K run, do a funny car wash, do something, get a bunch of friends together for a fundraiser and do something really fun and funny to bring light to this dark issue. and then gather the money and donate it to that charity or donate it to us.
Oh, I love it.
Right now we're paying
it.
for police scholarships so they can learn skills on how to recruit double agents inside these gangs. And we're raising scholarships for a girl who helped 150 of her classmates escape from the Taliban. And she's trying to go to Virginia Tech and doesn't have quite enough money. And I think she's an absolute hero. And you can give to Asthma Scholarship.
So good. So good, Jess. Thank you. I'm going to end with one final question. Who is the one person who's changed your life and why?
Easy answer. Well, of course, you've got your parents, right? I'm going to go beyond that. My mom's dad, James Dixon Bridge, my grandpa Bridge, he's just a hero. I mean, he if I ever grow up, that's who I hope to be like. Every one of his 50 grandkids thought they were his special grandkid. I mean, they were all delusional. It was obviously me, you know. But like he was successful in business. He was a leader in our faith. He was, on the Rotary, and I grew up in this little tiny farm town of 3,000 people, and we'd walk down Main Street, and he's kind of a big deal. Okay, he would just randomly stop people and be like, "Hey, I don't think I know you. I'm Jim Bridge." They're like, "Yeah, I know who you are, buddy." Right? But he was just genuinely interested in people. Like, my friends thought he was like their grandpa too. My friends loved to come to my grandpa's house with me. Like, when you would sit down with him, it was like you were his whole universe. And like, it's like if the president of the United States had called, he'd been like, "Oh, I'm with Jess right now. Can you tell him I'll call him back?" It's just like this, it was like the Care Bear stare of love being around this guy. And always cracking jokes, hard worker, into duty, doing what's right at the right time. And like I said, if I can get closer to me and like him, that's a big win in life for me.
I love it, Jess. Well, thank you so much for taking some time this afternoon and sharing your insights and your wisdom. And thanks again for being part of Fundraising Leaders with Drew.
Well, thank you for doing the show. Like, I'm going to watch all the rest of the episodes because I'm not as good a fundraiser as I want to be. Like, I feel like you're doing the rest of us such a favor to, like, as you've told me about this series and stacking up all these different folks who've been successful. Like, I can't wait to learn from the rest of your guests. So thank you for making this series.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess.
Bye.